All right. So, good evening, everybody. My name is David Eisenberg. I'm the chair of the Verdugo Hills Group of the Sierra Club. This is a joint program with our group and Crescenta Valley Group. And this is a webinar that you're in. So you will have, the chat is not working for you, although we can chat you. But there's a Q&A, so if you have a question, type your question at any time into the Q&A, but we'll ask the questions at the end, unless one of the panelists sees something that is very appropriate, that we might interrupt. And we'll be able to monitor that. So I'd like to, the Verdugo Hills Group, we're in Glendale and Burbank. We a little bit of LA around the borders. We have quite a number of programs coming up. Our first activity, though, is a hike down in downtown LA at the new 6th Street Viaduct in the Arts District that's down by the LA River down there. And that's going on April 1st. And then our programs coming up in April is old and new sites in New York and Massachusetts. We have one on national parks in May 1st. We have the Baltic countries on June 5th. And we have a hybrid meeting and these are all hybrid for us. We do it in person. You can come in person to Crescenta Valley Library, or you can sign up and get a Zoom link. And then in August, we have the Bruce Hales doing part 2 of the African Safari. You notice I didn't mention July because of the July 4th holiday. What we're doing instead at the end of June, on June 22nd, is we're having a potluck picnic at Casa Adobe Park. And that's, you're all welcome to come, bring a potluck. And I put our webpage, and all our activities are at the bottom of the webpage, is in the chat. So that's what we're up to. And of course, we have conservation activities such as, we're working to help the building electrification people in Burbank. We're working, we tried to stop all of the Grayson power plant. We reduced it, but we couldn't make it disappear. So feel free to contact us about if you live in Glendale or Burbank and want to get involved. We'd be very interested. Put something in the Q&A saying, how do I get involved in Verdugo Hills? And same thing for Crescenta Valley. You could do the same thing, and Pat will answer that. So this time I'd like to introduce Pat Kramer from the Crescenta Valley Group, and she's going to talk about her group and then introduce our panelists.
Yeah, hello everybody. I am representing the Crescenta Valley Group. I'm the program chair. My name's Pat Kramer. The Crescenta Valley Group is representative of the communities in the Crescenta Valley. So it would be Sunland, Tujunga, La Crescenta, La Cañada, and we do love to do hikes. So, we have been unable to do a lot of live hikes because of COVID, but we have been a very active group with hiking, and we will be returning to doing that soon. We also have trips scheduled. Our Crescenta Valley Group is known for booking trips both nationally and internationally, and we do have one coming up. I believe it is all booked, but it's the Alaska trip in June, and it's led by Fred Dong, who is our chairperson of the Crescenta Valley Group. And it will be going, through Alaska and the Katmai Peninsula too. But as I said, I believe that was booked earlier in the year. There is a waiting list, however, and you can always go to the Crescenta Valley Group on the Sierra Club Angeles chapter website, and you can see any activities we're doing. We also do a tree watering at Duke-Majan Park. I believe it's the 3rd Saturday of the month. We do that to maintain the oak trees that were planted. A lot of them were planted by our group, and so we want to make sure they survive. A lot of them were burned out in the station fire up at Duke-Majan. If you don't know where Duke-Majan Wilderness Park is, It's at the top of New York Avenue in La Crescenta. And it is a beautiful wilderness park with many trails that you can take just day hiking. You can take your dog on a leash. You can take your children. There are some easy hikes. There's also a nature center up there. So that's Duke Machen Wilderness Park in La Crescenta.
Pat, I put your group link in the chat for you.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you, David. Tonight, we have a very exciting presentation. If you have not experienced this before, this is our third one. And the reason we keep doing it is because conditions change and hikers continue to get lost and need to be rescued. So there's absolutely continuous need for more information to educate people who either are novice hikers or just unprepared for weather changes. We do have sudden changes in our Angeles Forest in the mountain areas. We have very high mountains there that experience very different climates than they do in the rest of LA or in the valley. And we also have situations where hikers just get injured or lost. So what you're going to learn tonight from our panelists is going to help you be better prepared. We hope you'll take good notes. We are recording it, so you will have the opportunity to get the recording probably within a week or so, David, after our program. Usually we put it out there.
Yeah, we have to process it and put it on the Angeles chapter YouTube channel, and then we'll send the link.
And then everyone will be sent the link so that you can re-experience this wonderful presentation. If you happen to walk away for a few moments, you will have it to watch again or to share it with family members and friends. So with that, I am going to introduce our panelists. First, we have Doug Crameline from Montrose Search and Rescue, who's going to be telling you about what search and rescue does, the type of situations they encounter, what they have encountered this year particularly, and what's going on with this weather right now up in the Angeles Forest, so that you perhaps might have a better idea if you do choose to go hiking. And then we're going to have Lisa Miyake, who's a WTC instructor. That's the Wilderness Travel course. And Lisa's going to go through all of the ways to get prepped so that you are ready for any emergencies. You have what you need on you. You don't have to ask somebody to help you, and also what to do if you do have an emergency situation. And Jane Simpson is with leadership training of the Sierra Club, and she's going to talk about leadership and how you can become a leader, hike leader. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Doug, and I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Good evening, everybody. I was going to mention this at the very end of my presentation, but since you mentioned Duke Machen Park, I'd like to invite everybody who has any interest in search and rescue or knows somebody who has interest in search and rescue to a recruitment event we have this Sunday at Duke Machen Park, starting at 7:30. And that is going to be a 2-mile hike for time. And through that hike, we find out if people are adequately physically fit in order to participate in search and rescue, and then invite them to join our team. In regard to that, we're not superheroes. We're not, Mount Everest type mountaineers. We're basically regular folks who are in fairly good condition and have an interest in helping other people. And if you can do this 2-mile hike, you can be on our team. So I would encourage anybody who has an interest to show up 7:30 this Saturday at Duke Machen Park. As Pat said, it's in the Glendale, La Crescenta area.
I actually have the address right here. It's 3429 Mark Ridge Road, Glendale, which is, La Crescenta, North Glendale. And that's at the top of New York Ave. It kind of goes across east and west.
You're better prepared than I am. Thank you, Pat. So please join us if you have any interest, or even if you just want to take a nice hike in the morning. As Pat said, dogs with a leash are welcome, and it's really a nice park all the way around, even aside from our recruiting event. I am a member of Montrose Search and Rescue. We're based out of the Crescenta Valley Sheriff Station, one of 8 search and rescue teams in LA County. Our area primarily covers the Angeles Crest Highway from La Cañada up to the area of Islip Saddle. a little before the subsaddle. And it encompasses about 500 square miles of the Angeles National Forest. So it's quite a large area that we cover. We are reserve deputies and civilian volunteers, a mix of both. In terms of the reserve members, we go to the Sheriff's Academy and become reserve deputy sheriffs. All of us are EMTs and go through extensive mountaineering training. As I say, you don't have to come in with any training. We provide that to you, but we do get trained in mountaineering. And these conditions that we've had recently have really put that to the test with all the ice and snow conditions that we've had recently. And I can't remember, well, certainly since I've been on the team for 16 years, it hasn't been as much snow and weather as we experienced this season. We have, what I'll do is talk about a couple of missions that we've had this year, and some learning points about those. And then Lisa will be able to, through her presentation, describe what you can do to avoid trouble and relate that to these specific incidents that we've had in our area this year. The first one I'd like to discuss was actually a group of Boy Scouts who were pretty well prepared. They went up across the stream of the Big Tahunga Canyon at approximately Vocal Flats and went up for a camp out. Rainy conditions, and unfortunately it rained more than they expected overnight. This was early in the storm cycle that we've had, and they were able to cross the stream to get to their campsite and not able to come back. So they were stuck and rightfully called for help. Which one good point is that if you need help and you're uncertain, it's better to call for help rather than get yourself in a worse situation by attempting something that you're not prepared to do. So they did call for help, and we were able to reach them and guide them back across the stream. This group with fairly good leaders, I'll say, they were well prepared to spend the night out and survive the rainy conditions. So we had the option, they could have stayed there and sheltered in place and been rescued a following day or whatever. Problem was that more weather was coming in, and we expected that it would be more and more difficult as time went on to get them out within a reasonable time period. But they had the sufficient gear, food, warm clothes, and they had left a plan as to where they were going and when they were expected to be back. So people knew that they were in trouble and were missing. So they had covered all those basic points that Lisa will outline in greater detail, describe in better detail. And they were brought back, no injuries, a little cold, a little wet, but they had prepared in advance and did well. So that's an example of people who prepared well. They may have had a little problem in decision making, and that obviously the weather was worse than they expected, and perhaps they should have not gone at all. But once they were in the situation, they were prepared to wait for rescue and to assist in rescue, in their own rescue. So if you follow the safety guidelines that you're provided tonight, you'll be in a similar situation should you experience problems, and that's the best result other than not needing rescue at all. So my kudos to them and to anybody who's adequately prepared in those situations. The second incident that we've had recently that I want to go into was at Mount Islip. And that's the gentleman who, I forget the date he was missing, was January 13th. And unfortunately, he didn't make it. He was found deceased on February 18th. So that's quite a long time missing. He was an experienced hiker, had the forethought to leave a plan as to where he was going. In fact, during his trip, he made contact with his family, so we knew approximately where he was. It was bad weather, and again, maybe the decision-making process was a little flawed in that perhaps he shouldn't have gone out at all, but he was experienced and felt he could handle the snow and ice conditions, so he wanted to make that risk and take that adventure. From what we can tell, he was found near the summit of Mount Islip. So he made his goal of reaching that summit, apparently slipped and fell down an ice chute and was killed during the fall. His body was recovered about 300 yards below the summit. So he took quite a long slide before he came to rest in his final spot. He was wearing what was called micro spikes. I don't know if folks are familiar with those, but they're basically traction devices that go on your shoes. And they're something that's useful in icy conditions that are flat. We discourage using that tool in steep and severe ice because they're just not sufficient to stop you if you fall down a steep slope or to prevent you from falling. I don't believe he had an ice axe, which is another thing that you really need to carry with you. And Lisa, would you mind putting up the slides that I had on that rescue? Just to show you what the conditions were at the time. And
Can you see the screen?
pardon me?
Can you see the screen?
Yes, it has safety and smart. There you go. So there, before he was found, this was I don't know, 3 weeks before he was found. A partner and I hiked up towards Mount Islip Summit. And if you're familiar with the area, there's a place called Windy Gap, and you can see that in the sign there. It maybe not obvious from the photo, but it was very severe conditions. Well, it should be obvious because you can't see the pine tree that's behind my partner there. Very windy, very cold, very icy. We didn't find him on that trip. Could you show the next slide, please? That's coming. It was severe enough that on the day that he was found, we were able to get to the top with helicopter. But the weather was so severe during most of the search that helicopters were not available. Sometimes people think, well, if I get lost or hurt, no problem. I'll just, a helicopter will come and save me. Not in these conditions. The helicopter aren't able to fly in the snow and clouds that we've had recently. So they've been severely limited. On the day that he was found, as you see, we were able to get in a helicopter to get lifted to the top of the mountain and then hike down and search around from there. And the next slide, Lisa. And this is the earlier search that my partner and I were involved in, just showing you the conditions. You'll see he has in hand an ice axe and he's climbing up a small frozen waterfall. And if you will look at his boots, you'll see that he has what's called crampons. And that's a device that you really need if you're going to hike in ice and snow. They have very large points, usually around 12 points on the bottom of your shoe. They attach to the bottom of your shoe. And they will stick into the snow and ice and give you purchase that you wouldn't otherwise have, even with those micro spikes. And also combined with that, the ice axe, so that if you do slip, you can use that axe to what's called self-arrest or stop yourself from falling in the ice. Obviously, all that is very technical. It requires you to purchase proper gear, and most importantly, to learn how to use it and practice it. So if you're going to go in those conditions, it should really be something that you thought about, you practiced for, and you have the right equipment to do. Otherwise, I really urge you not to go in the snow and ice. Wait for a better day. If you do decide to go, that you have the skills for it, be prepared and have the practice that you need. You can take the slides off. Thank you. This gentleman was found, unfortunately, as they say, he didn't make it, and he was found against a tree, and he was wearing micro spikes. It's improper and impossible for me to say that was the cause of his fall or that it contributed to it, but I can say that the micro spikes generally don't give you the traction that you need in snow and ice. And so if you're in steep, snowy and icy conditions, don't rely on the micro spikes. Other than that, our team has had a kind of an eerie lack of calls lately. I think it's because it's been so snowy and so rainy that people have just not gone outdoors. I expect that'll change when the conditions improve and it's a little sunshine and they can get out and enjoy the snow and ice in the mountains. So I expect that's when the calls will pick up. Let's see here. I wanted to tell you just briefly so you get an idea of how voluminous our calls for service are in this area. In 2022, we had 116 calls for service. Those involved 55 people who were rescued and unfortunately 9 fatalities, people who didn't make it. Several dog calls that we don't necessarily have rescued just dogs, but we have done that, but usually people that have a dog with them. So we've had several of those too. I know one of the questions was about hiking with a dog that was submitted before the start of the program. And so that it does happen that people have trouble with their dog, and we're there to help both the dog and the injured or lost hikers. So don't worry about your pet. Well, worry about your pet, but know that someone will be there to help you and your pet if it comes to that. I think when you hear Lisa's presentation, there's several things that will come to mind. And with both of the individual there at Mount Islip that was recovered deceased, he was hiking alone. In the Mount Baldy area, the missing movie or the actor was also hiking alone. So those are two examples where people hiking alone get into trouble and there's no one else for backup, call for help, or to share decision making. So generally, we advise that you do not hike alone. If you have someone there with you, it's safer and usually more enjoyable. So I think that's a key takeaway from both the Mount Baldy and incident with the movie actor and our incident at Mount Islip, that it's best not to hike alone. With the Boy Scouts and with the gentleman at Mount Islip, they both left an itinerary, a plan of where they were going. So at least it narrowed down where they were going to be and when they were expected to be back. So the family and consequently the search and rescue crews knew where to look and knew in a timely manner to start looking for them. So it's important that you leave an itinerary, a plan of where you're going, when you expect to be back, and to leave that with somebody reliable. Some people, and I think it's a good recommendation, will place that information inside their car. I guess that can be an invitation for someone to break into the car if they know you're not going to be back. But on the other hand, if you especially leave it well, I want to say not visible, but folded up so it doesn't isn't open to prying eyes immediately, that someone has to open the car to see it, that will give people, rescuers, an opportunity to know where you're going and what your plan was. There is a form on the LA Sheriff Department website that provides kind of a format for what information you can leave, your name, of course, where you're going, when you expect to be back, any medical conditions, a lot of information that can be useful. So if you look on the LA County Sheriff Department website, you can locate that form and use that for yourself when you go hiking. The standard advice is, of course, be prepared before you start. The Boy Scouts certainly were. They had all the gear that they needed to survive the night and longer, in fact, if we weren't able to rescue them that night. So good job to them for having that. And it's important that if you go out, that you have the 10 essentials, which Lisa will describe. And those are things that will help you make it through a night or two if you need to, and help you stay comfortable and safe during the time that you're lost or stranded. So she'll go into detail on the 10 essentials. There was one question I know submitted in advance. Is there anything else that's recommended apart from the 10 essentials, or the usual safety and emergency gear? And I'd say these days it's the cell phone. God knows you can do so much with the cell phone. They serve as a flashlight. Frequently you can make contact with somebody, or at least show a direction of travel through the cell phone pings. So I'd say the cell phone is an additional item that you would want to bring. And also easily available these days for emergency transmitter like eInReach and Spot that allow you to call for help, or at least signal when you need help. So those are something I highly recommend. We say don't hike alone, and obviously there are times when that does happen where people hike alone, but at least if you have a signaling device, you can let people know when you're in trouble, where you are, and exactly what's happened to you. So those are, I think, two items that I would say are newer to the list of things that you should bring if you plan to go out and you possibly need rescue. Excuse me. In terms of what to do when you do get lost or have problems, generally it's best to stay where you are. Don't continue to wander. Find a safe place that you can shelter and wait for help. And the more visible you can be, the better. As I said earlier, sometimes helicopters can't get out and look for you and try to help because of the weather or other factors. But if you can be in an open area so that you can be seen from air, that is helpful. And you think that it's easy to find people from a helicopter, but it's not. It's very difficult to see a person on the ground, especially in a forested area, unless they're visible and they do make efforts to make themselves visible, like displaying bright colors, making a group of three, a pattern of three, which is a universal sign for trouble that you need rescue, or in other ways, make themselves visible from the air. If you keep wandering and we have an idea where you are, you keep walking and you're farther and farther from where we think you are, from our last clue that we might find that shows your direction of travel. So it's better to stay put. In fact, for kids, we have a saying that we tell them, and that is hug a tree. And that simply translated means that just stay where you are by a rock, a tree, consider it an analogy of hugging it just to stay close to it. And that'll be your buddy to remind you to stay where you are. If you prepared in advance, use your gear and the emergency equipment that you brought with you. If you're short of water, it's not a problem in this area at this time, but it will be later in the summer. If you can find water, drink whatever is available, even if you think it might be polluted or it may have bacteria or whatever. Go ahead and drink it, because you definitely won't survive if you don't have water. If you get sick and when we find you, you can be helped with that later. But water is, of course, a priority of life. So if you find water and you need to drink, go ahead and do it. Finally, remember, don't lose hope, stay positive, and that we will start looking for you, and you will be found, and you will be rescued if you're patient and do whatever you can to keep yourself safe while you're waiting for us to find you. So keep hope, we'll be looking for you. Just going back to our recruitment of members. Search and rescue is very fulfilling. I can't think of anything more fulfilling than helping people in need, and being able to do that in the outdoors, which obviously most of you are interested in, since you're interested in the Sierra Club. Just adds to the overall enjoyment or fulfillment of the I don't call it occupation, but the vocation of search and rescue. So if you have an interest in helping people and you would like to do that in an outdoor setting, please consider search and rescue. You can come to our recruitment thing on Sunday, the hike, or we have our team meetings first Wednesday of every month at Crescenta Valley Station. And you can check our website or Facebook to get information on that and the time and place of where we meet. And that's really the start of our process, coming to the training hike or a meeting and getting to meet us and to know us. And from that, you get an invite and complete EMT training, probably the Sheriff's Academy, and then our mountain rescue training. And you can get out in the woods and be of help to people. So consider that. And if you have friends that might be interested, let them know too. And from that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Lisa.
Great, thanks, Doug. Give me a second to share my screen. Doug, can you see that?
Yes.
Awesome, excellent. So we heard a lot of good insight on, rescues that have happened recently from Doug, and also, just at a higher level of some of the things that we can do to prevent them. And so I'm going to go a little bit more in depth and more tactical in terms of specific tools and techniques that you can leverage before and during your hike to stay safe in the outdoors, to prevent some of the incidents that Doug spoke about earlier. So with that, excellent. So the first thing that you want to do in terms of staying safe in the outdoors is to prepare in advance. So before you even get in that situation or even go outdoors, determine should you be going outside, should you be going to that particular location. So some things to think about in order to adequately plan ahead. The first thing to do is to pick an appropriate outing. So is it something that's within your skill level, and are you trained up for it? So just because you're able to do it 10 years ago doesn't mean that you could do it now with zero training as part of your New Year's resolution or what have you. Is it more mileage or gain than you can handle in a day? So, again, have you trained up for it? If it's a long day hike, are you starting early in the morning? Are you able to acclimate to that particular altitude if you're going particular high? Just just things to think about in terms of the outing itself to see if it's the right outing for you. Another thing that you should do in advance is to research the weather and conditions. So websites like weather.gov and mountain-forecast.com, those sites in particular are good for looking at weather forecasts because they can give you forecasts based on where you are on the mountain, or at a particular elevation there, as opposed to if you use a basic weather site like weather.com or AccuWeather.com, stuff like that, they will generally give you data for the nearest city. And so that is typically not necessarily applicable to higher up in the mountains. In terms of knowing about the conditions, especially now with, the multiple weather systems coming in, you should know whether the terrain is going to be snowy and icy. And if it is, do you have the right skill sets to travel on that? And do you have the right gear? And if not, you should reconsider going to that particular location at this time. Also, with the weather systems comes sometimes rockfall. Things are, trees falling over, rocks falling, and is that impacting your route and your ability to navigate it? Especially with the rain, is there a potential for flash flooding where you're at just because it's not raining where you're at? A rain system in a particular area that feeds into where you're going could lead to a flash flood. So you should be aware of what those conditions will look like. Another thing, especially, snow is a hot topic right now just because or cold topic, whatever, because we're seeing a lot of it, right? And so again, do you have the right equipment? Doug referenced, an ice axe, crampons, helmet, do you have those and know how to use it? Just having some micro spikes is not going to be enough, because if you fall, you have no way to save yourself, right? You have no way to stop yourself from slipping. So make sure you have the right equipment and the training to go out into those particular conditions. Another thing to consider is making sure that you're dressed for the occasion and then also have extra. So if it's going to be very hot, which is not so much an issue right now, or very cold, you want to make sure you're prepared for that. We always say no cotton kills, but make sure you have clothing that wicks. So you want to bring clothing that if it gets wet, it will dry over time, as opposed to cotton, which will just hold on to the moisture. And then you also want to make sure you bring layers so you can kind of adjust accordingly based on how your body temperature is and how it's reacting to you hiking and whatnot. You should have a travel time, especially if you're doing something like a peak. It's very easy to get very objective oriented and then kind of lose sight or concept of how much time you have left. And so you should give yourself a turnaround time. So, okay, at 2 p.m. or 1 p.m., what have you, you need to turn around whether or not you've hit your objective. The mountain will always be there, but you may not if you get yourself in a bad situation. Also, make sure you give yourself some margin for daylight, especially if you're unfamiliar with hiking in the dark. Have a headlamp, and we'll talk about the 10 essentials later. So you should have a way to navigate in the dark. But if you're not familiar with the area, you don't like hiking in the dark, you should definitely prepare timing your trip so you don't get yourself in that kind of situation. Starting early would obviously help with that. Doug referenced this, let someone know where you're going and when you intend to return. This is especially important for solo hiking, as you could imagine, but even if you're in a group, you have to assume that there's a chance that you might get separated from the group, especially if it's like just a meetup and you don't really know them. So you should at least let someone at home know where you're going and when you plan to return, so that in the event that the authorities do need to be called or search and rescue needs to be called, that they can share this information with them. Also, just a general safety tip in terms of your property, make sure you don't have anything showing in your vehicle, like expensive electronics or wallets and things like that. There are occasional, break-ins at trailheads, so you just want to be mindful and safe of that. Turn off your electronic devices if for whatever reason you decide to keep it in the car, because there are definitely devices that could pick up on that if you keep them on in your vehicle. So, we definitely recommend hiking in a group. It can help mitigate some risk, not all, obviously. So if you're caught in an emergency situation, obviously there's strength in numbers in terms of others in your group being able to help you, or like physically help you, or call for help or go get help in the event that something happens. But you should also keep a few things in mind when selecting the people that you go with. So first of all, it is definitely recommended that you know who you're traveling with. So meetup, Facebook groups and stuff, it's great and a good opportunity to meet people, but it might not necessarily be the best way to meet people for the first time, especially if, you know, you're going on a longer or more aggressive hike. So do you know the people? Do you know the leaders who are leading the outing? Are they trained in anything like first aid, wilderness first aid, CPR, or are they just, you know, friends leading strangers kind of thing? And more importantly, if something happened to you, would they actually stay with you or would you be left behind? So just things to keep in mind in terms of who you travel with. The nice thing about Sierra Club outings, and one of the reasons why I really like hiking with the club, is that the outings are led by trained leaders, and we always have what we call a lead and a sweep. So there's someone who's a trained leader at the front of the group, and there's someone who is a trained leader at the end of the group, so that they can ensure that no one is left behind. If someone is kind of lagging, you know, slowing down a bit, the sweep is with that individual and make sure that they catch up with the group. So that is a benefit of going on an official Sierra Club outing, is that you have that level of training and that level of accountability to the group, if you will, if you travel with them. Also, I would definitely recommend knowing the route, even if you're not leading the outing, right? And even if you're in a group, you should know where you're going. You should generally know, like, what mountain range are you in, like who would you call if you needed help, right? So these things are things you should know even if you're not the one leading, because if you get separated, what happens then, right? If you did zero research, then you have no idea, you know, which way to head even. And so one of the things I would also recommend is, like, let's say as you're going up the mountain, on occasion, particularly at like critical junction points and things like that, make sure you look behind you and back down the mountain, because what you see going up doesn't necessarily match obviously what you see going down. And so things look very different. And so what you want to do is turn around and occasionally look down, especially at these critical junctions, so you know, okay, this is what I should look for, and I should be turning left here when I arrive. So just something to think about in terms of kind of knowing where you're at and understanding your route. If you get lost, don't panic. So, you know, you can hug a tree or whatever Doug said, but, you know, take 15 minutes or just take a few minutes to kind of, you know, settle down, observe, you know, what's around you, think through where did you know where you last were, come up with a plan, drink some water, eat some food, make sure you're not super fatigued to take any action or injured or anything like that. So take care of you. And then, you know, if you know or have a good understanding of where, you know, where you were or where you last were, where you knew where you were and you know how to get there, then figure out how, you know, make that move. But if not, like Doug said, just kind of stay put, because you're better off than just kind of wandering off, especially if there's help on its way. So the 10 essentials are essentially things that you should have on you at all times, whether you're, you know, on a day hike and hiking alone, or you're in a big group setting on a massive backpack. You know, you might make some tweaks based on how many days you're going out, or, you know, if it's a short day hike, but at the same time, you should have some element of the 10 essentials with you at all times when you're hiking. And so this is the framework that the 10 essentials are now presented in. Specifically, it's things that help you find your way, things that protect you, and then things that you may need in an emergency. So I'll go through them in a bit more detail. The first one is tools for navigation. So you want, ideally, you want to stay found. The best way not to get lost is to always know where you are, which is probably easier said than done, but definitely something, you know, there's training that can help you better navigate. And then there's also tools that help you do that. So one is obviously a map. Having a topographic map of the particular area that you're going to would help you stay found and understand where you are. You should understand how to read a map and what the different symbols and the lines and all that mean. Contour lines will give you a sense of elevation. You should also know that, you know, man-made features, even trails, might not be exactly accurate on a map, because things that are man-made could move, could be removed. Especially if there's map updates over time. So that's just something to consider. And then also, if you are carrying a map, or when you are carrying a map, you should store it in a plastic bag in the event that you get rain or some other you know, precipitation that could lead to your map, you know, the ink running or what have you. So you should protect your map. You should also carry a compass. It's something that's lightweight, so you'll actually bring it with you. It should have a see-through base, so that you could actually overlay it on a map. It should have a mirror, so it's easier to actually sight off of. And I'm not going to going to go into detail on how to use a compass here. There's a separate class for that, which I'll talk about later. But it's something that you want to carry with you in terms of like fulfilling that navigation element of the 10 essentials. There are also, mapping applications that you could download to your phone, like Gaia, Peak Bagger. There's GPSs. There's, all these smartwatches now have everything from actual routes to altimeters. A lot of things to help supplement your ability to navigate with technology. But at the end of the day, anything that's battery operated or runs off of some sort of electronic component could fail. So you want to have a map and compass with you and know how to use them so that you could stay found. The next item on the list is illumination. So having a headlamp is good, ideal. It allows you to travel hands-free, right? So you could have a little flashlight maybe as a backup, but you definitely want that hands-free travel ability. So find a headlamp that works well for you, and then definitely carry extra batteries or spare light in the event that your headlamp goes out, especially when it's cold. It's not unusual for like batteries to just kind of die out. So you want that the backup and spare with you. Next, we have sun protection. So one thing to note is that sun is more damaging at altitude, and it also reflects off of snow. So the higher you go, and especially if you're going in snowy conditions, you want to be prepared for that. So the first one, the obvious one, is sunscreen. So you want something that's SPF 15 or higher. And you also, if you sweat a lot, especially, you want something that has, waterproofing. And also make sure you protect your lips. So have some sort of chapstick or lip balm to protect that. And then sunglasses are also important, especially if you're going on snow and altitude. Not only do you want sunglasses, but you want something called glacier glasses, or essentially they are sunglasses with side shields, so that when the sun bounces off the snow, it doesn't go in your eyes, because you can get snow blindness if you absorb a fair amount of light through your eyes at elevation. And especially if it's reflecting off of the snow, and you can get snow blind. And that is a problem, obviously, if you can't see where you're going in these more technical terrains. So something that you will want to carry with you if you decide to go into those kinds of conditions. And then also protective clothing is important. So I will often opt to wear a long sleeve as opposed to covering my arms with sunscreen. That's a personal choice, but either way, you protect your arms. Also having a hat, and it looks a little dorky, but the extra cover helps protect most of the face from the sun. So good for keeping the skin nice and clean, and trying to avoid sun damage, but also just generally good for you in terms of protecting you and your body. Next, we have nutrition. So nutrition is extra food. This isn't the snacks, or these aren't the snacks that you're bringing on your hike, but it's the additional food that you have in the event that something happens and you have to stay out overnight that you weren't expecting, and you have this extra food and these extra calories to get you through the evening. So what you want is something that's high calorie, that you don't have to cook. That's ideally lightweight, right? This is stuff that's spare, and you should ideally not have to tap into it, because it's just a matter of survival, really, and not so much what you're snacking on throughout the day. And one good way to gauge if you have enough extra food is to, at the end of every hike or backpacking trip, what I'll do is kind of do a quick inventory of what I came back with. So sometimes I come back with very little food. So that means I was either very hungry or I didn't carry enough extra food with me, right? So if I come back with very little margin, that means that if I had to stay an extra night and wasn't prepared for it, that could have been a problem. And so it helps me gauge what's considered sufficient extra food for future trips. And as you do more outings and kind of check your inventory each time, then it'll allow you to calibrate if you have enough extra food, and make sure you bring that with you, whether it's a day hike or a backpacking trip. Next, we have hydration, also very important. Kind of the same concept, it's extra water. So one way to inventory if you have enough extra water, let's say it's a day hike and you only brought 2 liters and you drink all 2 liters, you didn't have enough extra. But if you went in with 3, came back with an extra liter, that means you at least had some margin with you. Another way to essentially create extra water while you're out hiking or backpacking is to carry things like iodine tablets, or drops, filters, things like that, that help you clean the water that you know will be available on the trail or the route that you're doing that you can tap into to create that extra water for you. Obviously, especially important on backpacks where you're probably not going to be able to carry 3 days worth of water with you, but you can carry a filter that would allow you to create that water when you're, backpacking at a lake or something like that. And while it's always preferred to clean your water, I think Doug alluded to this earlier, you want to, if you need the water and it's there and you don't have a filter, just drink the water, because if you get sick off of it, it usually takes a couple days for something like Giardia to really go through your system and do some damage. So drink the water and then get yourself out, right? This is an emergency situation where you're out of water. Drink the water that's available to you, get yourself out. And then when you're back in the city or home or what have you, then you could go to medical facilities to deal with whatever you've ingested, if it even comes to that point. But what you don't want is a situation where there's water available to you and you don't drink it because you didn't have a filter. Or in some cases, there have been people who have succumbed to dehydration and they had water with them, but they were saving it for later and they weren't drinking it. And ultimately, if you don't drink the water you have and you're not able to get yourself out, then that water is completely useless. So drink the water, right? Just get yourself out. Next is insulation. So again, no cotton. Make sure you have synthetic or wool clothing, things that will wick, so that if you're sweating throughout the day, when you get to camp at night, or let's say you have to sleep out overnight unexpectedly, that your clothing doesn't just stay wet because it's cotton. You want things that wick. Again, synthetic and wool clothing will allow you to do that. And then make sure you bring layers. So it's not just about like, oh, I'll just bring my massive snowboarding jacket with me so that if it gets cold, I can wear it. No, you're not going to hike in that. That doesn't sound comfortable. So you want layers so you adjust while you go. So if it gets a little colder, but you're still hiking, then maybe you have a light fleece jacket that kind of helps you get through that part. So, for me, I carry as a backup, like long underwear with me. I don't hike with it, but it's in my backpack just in case I get in a situation where I have to sleep out overnight. Have a fleece jacket, a light down jacket. I always carry waterproof clothing like rain gear. So even if there's 0 chance of rain on the day I'm going day hiking, there might be a 20% chance of rain the following day. And if I, somehow get in a situation where I hurt myself and I had to stay overnight on the mountain, then I want to be prepared for rain. So I always have, I have one very heavy set of rain gear and one lighter set of rain gear. And I'll bring one or the other based on what's predicted for the next couple of days, just to have the ability to stay dry and warm in the event that weather does come in while I'm on the mountain. Next is fire. So you want to, if you get to an emergency situation where you do have to build a fire to stay warm, then, have the ability to build one. So waterproof matches, you could have something like a backup, like a lighter that could help you build a fire as well. Then make sure you have some sort of fire starter like tinder, Vaseline with cotton balls, candles, something that you can actually light. Next, you have an emergency shelter. So, a space blanket is technically sufficient, right? But if you just want to carry something light, but a lot of people, especially like mountaineers and people who might end up getting in a situation with it when they have to spend the night out, is we bring what's called a bivy sack. I specifically recommend and have once used is a sole bivy sack. And what's nice is it actually has a foot enclosure, so it's kind of like being in a burrito. It's lovely, but you're fully covered, your head sticking out, but you're fully wrapped in this sack, which is better than just having the blanket over you. It keeps you a lot warmer because it has that foot enclosure. You also want to make sure that, as part of being able to stay warm overnight, you have the extra clothing as mentioned earlier, but then also if you are sleeping on the ground, then put things underneath your body so that between the body and the ground, which is cold and would suck your heat, you have a layer of things between you, like your backpack, your sit pad, if you're climbing, your rope, just things that will help get your body off the ground and keep you a little bit warmer to help you get through the night. Next, you have repair kit and tools. You could do a lot of things with duct tape, and knives and multi-tools are also very useful. So you want to be able to repair, let's say, your pants, your boots. I've definitely seen boots, wrapped up in duct tape, just enough to get someone off the mountain because the sole came off or what have you. So you want the ability to be able to fix things in the field and then get yourself into a safer situation, usually hiking yourself out with the materials that you have. Or let's say like, your pants have a rip or something, like you could use a safety pin and that could be sufficient for your trip. So just have the ability to repair things so that you don't, ruin your trip or get yourself in an unsafe situation. Next, you have first aid. So the prepackaged ones are nice. You could buy these kits at the CVS or REI or what have you, but you should also modify it based on what you'll need and also like what you understand. So if you get the standard kit and there's drugs in there that you don't know what they do or if you would use them, you probably shouldn't keep them in there. If there's duplicates, like it has a pair of scissors in there, but you're also carrying your multi-tool, you probably don't need that pair of scissors. They also typically come in like sturdier bags. And if you need that, that's great. But if you want to cut some of the weight so you actually carry this bag with you as opposed to ditch it because it's so heavy, then bring a Ziploc bag or something and repackage, know what's in your kit and know how to use it. So that's probably the best advice I could give for first aid kits. So these are the 10 essentials. And one of the things to know is like, you should know where your items are in your pack. So some people will throw all 10 essentials in a Ziploc and that's where they carry them. For me, I will carry the different tools based on frequency of use. So sunscreen might be like in my hip pocket, but my fire source, which I wouldn't use unless I had to build a fire, if I had to stay out overnight, is probably deeper in my pack. So for me, I have certain things that are located based on how frequently I think I'll use it. But at the end of the day, what it comes down to is just know where the things are. So the map should be more readily available than, my extra food that I'm not going to need until tomorrow. So just something to think about in terms of where you store your 10 essentials. Doug alluded to this a little bit earlier as well, but we definitely recommend not hiking alone. There's definitely strength in numbers from a safety perspective, from a fun perspective, but sometimes things happen. Maybe you want to hike alone, or maybe your group failed, but you still want to go. So my first piece of advice would be to don't hike alone. But if you do, a couple things to consider. So one is you should make sure you have your emergency contact information and medical history on you. This is probably the case even if you're not hiking alone, like even if you're hiking in a group, you should have some form of that. So whenever I go out, I have old copies of my driver's license and my health insurance card in my backpack so that if something happened, I have that. And if I ended up in a hospital, I have my insurance card as opposed to having to deal with, them assuming I don't have insurance. I also wear something that's called a road ID, and it has like my basic emergency contact information. So it has my parents' info and, my birthday, my blood type and stuff like that. So that's all available on my person so that in the event that, I'm injured and separated from my backpack with the additional information that, if someone finds me and I'm unconscious, that they could still identify who I am and who they should contact. If something happens to you while you're hiking alone, you'll want to call for help. Having a whistle or the ability to yell very loudly could be useful, but of course that really only works if someone's nearby. So, if you want to contact search and rescue, there's a couple of devices, or several devices, but there's a couple of types in particular that could be useful, the personal locator beacon. So the Garmin InReach Mini is super popular because it's small, lightweight. The negative, if you will, about it is that there is a subscription fee. So, there's a monthly recurring fee in addition to actually paying for the device itself. There are others that do not have a subscription fee, like the Rescue Me by ACR Electronics, but that only has an outbound signal. So there's no subscription fee, but it only releases an outbound signal and there's no two-way communication. Whereas the Garmin InReach, you could actually like send texts and stuff. Very basic ones, but you could still kind of communicate back and forth. So you just got to figure out what your use case is and what your price point is and figure out which tool works best for you. But it is definitely that is what I would consider my 11th essential, is having some sort of personal locator beacon so that I could, call for help. Because in that scenario, I'm assuming that I don't have cell service, or maybe I've ran out of juice for my cell phone. And so this is one way that I could, you know, try to get rescued in the event that I'm not able to save myself. So we covered a lot of information today. I only really had about 20 minutes to share with you, you know, some bits about hiking safety and the 10 essentials, but this is really only the tip of the iceberg of what you could do in terms of being, you know, more prepared to be a safe hiker. And the Wilderness Travel Course, which is an organization that I've, you know, done volunteering instructing through for about the past decade, they provide the training and the skill sets needed to help minimize some of the potential safety and emergency issues that Doug talked about earlier. And so we teach things like how to be safe in the backcountry, how to stay found, how to travel, eat, and sleep comfortably in the outdoors. It's not just about survival, right? It's about having fun too. Wilderness rules and ethics, and then, you know, finding new friends and hobbies kind of through this program. And so I'd say number 2 and number 5, which is staying found and finding new friends and hobbies, are the main reasons why people take the class. Because, you know, navigation is super important, right? In terms of, you know, knowing where you are and being able to go beyond just trails. A lot of people take the class because they did a lot of trail hiking, but they want to go beyond that. You know, how do I get to that mountain? There's no trail there. So how do I learn how to navigate and travel there safely? And of course, finding new friends who are also into or interested in getting into backcountry travel is another reason why people take the course, because then you're no longer hiking alone. There's extra margin in terms of safety there, but also makes the experience a lot more fun. So the WTC, our area actually just wrapped up. So it's offered January through March, and it's comprised of 10 weeknight courses and 4 weekend outings every other weekend. So there's a full day hike, a weekend of rock travel in Joshua Tree, which is super fun, a snow day hike, and then a 3-day weekend of snow travel in the Sierras. And so the course is offered in 4 different areas: San Gabriel Valley, West Los Angeles, Orange County, and South Bay / Long Beach. And that's the area I belong to. And so I'd like to say it's the best. But yeah, there's 4 different areas where this course is offered. It's offered January through March. So registration will open back up in the fall, I believe. But David will send in the post-webinar email, he'll send out a way for you to indicate interest in the class. And we could ping you when registration is open back up. So with that, I think there's a couple other parts to the presentation, but the wilderness-travel-course.org is where you can find more information about the course itself. And then they do have an Instagram account, SCWTC, or you could always message me. I'm at Rose to Adventure, and we're both on Instagram. So that is it, and I will stop sharing my screen and let, I believe, Pat take over. Pat, I believe
Muted, Pat.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to add that I took wilderness travel course back in 1993, and I am still friends with one of the participants that I hiked with all that time ago. So yes, it actually has changed my whole experience in the outdoors in a very positive way. So thank you for sharing that, Lisa. Jane, would you like to share about leadership training?
You know, I'm happy to say that I want to just say a few words to plug the concept of leadership training, and also plug the fact that we have some leadership training seminars coming up. And I will drop that link for David to share with you guys. What strikes me when I hear these presentations is that, you know, we're talking to many of you who are, let's say, participants, and some of you are already leaders. Some of you may be on a leadership track. So why even be a leader? I think my view has always been, learn how to be a leader, because you don't know if you may be separated from your group, and you might benefit by having enough of the skills, enough of the knowledge that we can help you learn about, so that you can, you know, safely either lead your friends or make sure you find your way out of a situation. So leadership training that we teach is pretty broad. but it includes group management. We've actually started incorporating emotional safety aspects to our training. We talk about, certainly we talk about safety, physical safety. I think the part that people really love about our training are the scenarios that we do, where we throw out a concept of a situation and have our participants figure out how to handle that situation. So if you have any idea about being a leader, think about it in terms of helping your family, your friends, and being a better participant when you go out there. So we have a seminar coming up. April 1st is full, but we have one for May 7th. We will have more of them in the fall, and our new program is to have some of the training happen during an online training, e-learning experience that's hosted by the Sierra Club. And then our seminar is a shorter thing, like about 3.5 hours, where we talk through some of these situations. We have some inspiring talks as well. And, you know, you'll come away from it with, you know, a plan to go ahead and become a provisional leader. All of this stuff is on our website. It's a leadership training, safety, outings management website. And you can poke around and learn a lot about how the Angeles chapter, you know, trains leaders and also conducts outings. And yeah, there's a lot of rules and regulations and protocols and procedures, but, you know, once you get familiar with some of it, it kind of becomes easy, I think. And I will make a plug for navigation too, because that's something I'm into, and I'm a navigation examiner, and we love navigation. Come out and just learn basic map and compass stuff. So I will drop that our link to our seminar for David to share later, and you can ask us questions as well.
You can also put it in the chat if you want.
Oh, I can. You're right. All right. So I'm going to do that right now. This will be the seminar. And when I drop in this link, it will be, you can then see the site and then poke around to find other goodies, like,
Perfect.
you know.
Make sure you send it to everyone, not just to panelists.
Oh, okay. Hold on. I think I can't send it to everyone. That was why. Why don't you, I just
Where
sent.
it says to, click on that. And then
Oh, yeah, no, it's not letting me do that.
okay, just send it to the panelists.
I sent it to you, host and panelists, so you take it from there. Take it away, David.
There are
Okay.
some questions. We were talking earlier about the places where accidents are most frequently occurring on Mount Baldy. We were having that discussion before our webinar took place. And I see that Bobcat Thompson has asked the same question. What are the most frequent locations Montrose Search and Rescue has to go to search for rescue people, both in the Angeles National Forest and outside of it? And have those locations changed in the past few years? Do you get more injuries or lost calls?
Well, actually, Mount Baldy is not within our jurisdiction or our reporting district. We go out there to assist San Bernardino County, but it's not technically within our area. On Mount Baldy, it seems to me that a lot of accidents occur along the Devil's Backbone. There's an area on that route to the summit that's really narrow. And in snow, it can be just a couple feet wide, icy, and just a sheer drop on one side and a very steep on the other side. So I know a lot of accidents occur there, but probably more accidents because there are more people occur along the Baldy Bowl, which is fairly steep, and if it gets icy, you will take a slide. And so it's suspected that the missing actor is somewhere in the Baldy Bowl. And as I say, I think the more accidents occur there just because there's more people up there or on that trail. Also, at the summit of Baldy, you can go, especially if it's foggy, you can go the wrong way, and it quickly becomes steep towards the Fish Creek drainage, which is, I guess, be the west side of Aldi. And I know we had a victim that fell to his death on that side a couple of years ago. In fact, one of our team members, before they joined the team, got lost up in the summit of Baldy, proceeded towards Pine Mountain and got stranded for several days with a child up there between the summit of Baldy and Pine Mountain. Foggy, and she just wasn't able to find a route. So just from the summit too, you can make an error and go the wrong direction. In terms of our area, Montrose and the Angeles Forest, we probably have most of our calls are in the Switzer Falls area. The reason for that is that we get more traffic there than anywhere else. I think the more hazardous area is up towards Mount Waterman. And especially recently after the Bobcat fire, a lot of the trails are obliterated, trail signs are missing. It has been closed. I think it's reopened to the public at this point. But with snow, and as much snow as we had, it's very, very difficult to follow the trails. And if you get off trail, you can come in trouble quickly. So I think that's the most hazardous area for us is Twin Peaks, Mount Waterman area. There was another question about, let's see, I saw it on I have to apologize. I was looking at all the questions and then I had to leave Zoom and get back in because I did something wrong. What do you think? What do you do with a hiker, leader, or member who does not believe in the seriousness of an unfolding bad situation? And I don't know, Jane, I think that be one for you in terms of leadership.
You know, that one is interesting because what you want to ask in this circumstance is are you a participant observing that a hike leader or other member of that group is not taking the situation serious? I can say that I've been in situations where people are tired and so a participant decides to go off in this other direction, and the leader is forced to stop and hold everybody and make sure that that person isn't really going off in an unsafe way. And that's part of how I think we, in terms of leadership training, make sure that we try to keep our groups together. And so keeping an eye on each other is another aspect of that, and a group leader being ultra aware of the mood, emotional, physical of the whole group. The seriousness could be the weather, could be lightning coming in, could be rockfall. So what do you do if you're a participant and you see all this going on? You're with the group, and it depends on, are you hanging off the side of a cliff or not? Probably so in other words, this situation is a little broad, and maybe the person who asked it has an actual scenario that they encountered once, because I'm not sure where I'd go with an answer other than emphasizing that the leader needs to be in control of the group.
I have just from a search and rescue perspective, I've read that a common occurrence, especially in backcountry skiing and hiking in avalanche areas, is sort of a peer pressure effect that you want to avoid. That being that you're going along and several people say, well, I want to go skiing here, so we're going to do it. And you just say, okay, well, they want to do it and it must be safe, rather than independently evaluating it. And in search and rescue, we have a rule amongst ourselves: is there's one person who says this is not safe, then they can call it quit, and we won't go farther. So it avoids that thing of just going along with the group. And I think it's important to feel yourself empowered that if you think it's severely unsafe and you shouldn't go, then say, I'm not going to do it, and you guys shouldn't either, rather than just relying upon and it can be experts that say, well, this person knows more than me, so I'll go along with it. But don't do that. Make an independent assessment, even if you're not the most expert, and be willing to stand up and say this isn't safe, rather than the peer pressure group mentality thing.
Also, I just had a question too about the avalanche website. Doug, did you mention there was some sort of resource?
Yeah, I did. I don't know how to get these things on the group, to the group, but let's see here. The one I use is SoCal Avalanche Center, and the website is SoCalSnow, all one word, .org. And that is specific to this area, the San Gabriel Mountains, from Angeles Forest and Mount Baldy area, and San Gorgonio. I think they also cover San Jacinto. In fact, I'm sure they do. But and that also depended on what area you're in. So that's what I use for our local mountain, SoCal Avalanche Center. And then for the Sierras, I like Eastern Sierra Avalanche Center. And in fact, that's really more robust as you would expect, because they have more snow and more avalanche terrain in the Sierras than we have here. So that's really a top notch, the Sierra, Eastern Sierra
Could
Avalanche.
you repeat that? Eastern Sierra Avalanche Center?
Eastern Sierra Avalanche Center. And I don't
ESAC.
know. Pardon me?
ESAC, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Is it an acronym or is it spelled out?
No, it's an acronym. Let me find it for you.
Yeah, whoever finds it first, put it in the chat.
And that, as I say, they give a very detailed and frequently updated summary. And well, you can go down from a summary to a very detailed explanation as to why it's happening and what aspects of the mountain to avoid and that sort of thing.
Perfect. David,
I
are there
got
any
it.
more questions?
Yeah, we have a question about ham radios. If somebody's a ham person and they have a portable ham radio, which there are people that hike that way, is there an emergency ham channel that people could call if that's their electronic device?
I've not seen anybody use ham radios to call for rescue in the mountains. I believe that they have an emergency maritime channel, and I forget what it is. I get seasick so easily. I just try to stay off the water. But I know my brother-in-law is quite a fisherman, and my son, in fact, and they have there is a maritime distress channel. I don't know if that works in the mountains or not. I don't know what the range is. Generally, people use the family radios, and it can be a problem figuring what frequency they have on those. But I carry one myself in case one of a group is missing. Usually they've agreed to use a particular channel on that, and you can tune into that and try to reach the missing. And then, of course, the go-to for that would be the InReach or Spot that Lisa described, which is satellite operated, and you'll be able to get a hold of the state Office of Emergency Services, and then it's channeled through to local areas. But being satellite operated, you're going to get a signal most likely with that. I'm sorry for that. I really don't know about ham.
Yeah, I would think, knowing ham radio people, I don't do it myself, but I would imagine anybody you could contact would make sure that the message is forwarded on to the appropriate people. They tend to do that. I have a question for Lisa. You showed an emergency bracelet with contact information. Where do you get that? Where do you order that?
It's called Road ID. Is they cater towards like trail runners and hikers and mountaineers, cyclists even. I will drop the link into the chat for you to share it, David, since I can't share it to the group.
Okay.
But yeah, that's I don't have it on right now because I'm home, but yeah, I'll wear that while I'm hiking, just so that it's pretty cool. It has, you could do like, medical allergies or, allergies and things like that. Just list those on there. So if medical staff arrives, they know, your allergies, your blood type, things like that. And they have like a wrist thing. They have another one that you could attach to your shoe. So it's like pretty seamless, but I included the link in the chat for you, David, so that you can share it to the broader
Okay.
audience.
And for those of you that asked, we are recording this. The recording will be available. It'll take a few days to process. And we will, all the links and everything we'll put in a post event email. It either will come from Zoom or it will come from our Sierra Club group email, depending on where I am at the time and what we have access to.
And I have an announcement I just wanted to add, David. I previously referred to our Crescenta Valley group's trip in June. It's actually July. So I wanted to correct myself. It is the 9-day, 8-night Alaska trip to also includes 3 days on the Katmai Peninsula to see the grizzly bears fishing for salmon. And that's July 15th is when it leaves. Previously, I was told it was booked, but if somebody drops out, there's always a chance that somebody could get in. And the other thing I wanted to mention is the Sierra Club banquet is coming up on Sunday, May 21st, from noon to 3 p.m. That's an annual event that the Sierra Club does. And anyone can buy a ticket, and it's going to be held at DTLA, which is a location at 300 South Mission Road in Los Angeles. It's downtown. So those are my announcements.
Okay. And you know, I typed a comment about from a ham in the chat, and then we got one quick last question. We can answer. We have time. What do you do if you encounter an injured animal, or you know, any animal actually that might injure you? Is that something you deal with? Anybody? Probably Doug.
Darn it. It's like you're in class and you put your head down so the teacher won't call on you. Well, I mean, first of all, it depends on the type of animal, injured or not. They say with bears, make yourself large. If it's a black bear, which is all we have in California, and make noise, then they generally will avoid people, as opposed to grizzly bears who look at people as a food source. So with those, you just want to back off if you can. Slowly, don't run, because if you run, they'll consider you prey. But get away from them. And if they come right up to you, try to play dead, even if they're attacking you, because they're probably trying to defend cubs, or maybe trying to defend cubs. So your best bet is to just stay still. Hopefully they leave. You probably wouldn't be able to fight one without a firearm. So with grizzly, it's a different situation. But yeah, as I say, there aren't grizzly bears in California. With mountain lions, I think the recommendation is to make yourself look large and yell and try to frighten them away. If they have cubs or kittens in their case, that'd be a different situation, and you would want to back away. Still look large, but try not to look like a threat to their kittens. With black bears, the only time I think they're dangerous is if they have cubs. So you certainly don't want to insert yourself or inadvertently or on purpose between them and the cubs. And if you do, you back away, look large again, and try to get out of the situation by just walking slowly away. The only other larger predator I can think of is a coyote, and again, they don't look at as people as a food source. Generally afraid of them, especially in the wild. Even if they're injured, it'd be very doubtful that they try to attack a person. So just stay away from the best you can. Frankly, when I'm hiking around this area, I'm more afraid of rattlesnakes than anything else. And they generally aren't aggressive to people. Some species are more aggressive than others. But the thing with them is to just get away and back away slowly. I understand from my reading that most rattlesnake bites are sustained by men between the ages of 20 and maybe teens and 30 with alcohol related. They're going to catch the snake and show it off or whatever. So don't do that. Leave it alone and let it go back to its environment. And if it's rattling at you as a sign it's threatened by you, so just get away from it. That's all I have on that topic.
Okay. So let's see, we got people are giving thank yous, and so I think we're done. We definitely want to thank you all for coming and spending your time and preparing for this, and hopefully one of the people will or more will use this device and not have to be rescued.
Yes, and I want to thank our panelists and you also, David, for pulling it together. Every year when we do this, this is our most popular program of the year. And last year, we got a thank you from someone who said that by listening to the presentation, her husband survived a fall and she knew what to do to get him to safety. And so you never know who you're touching with this information. Everyone who's on the call, please share it with as many people as possible, because we want to make sure that, you know, there aren't as many fatalities, you know, as there could be.
All right.
But thank you all.
So thank you all. Oh, there's oh, if you saw Jane's, if you see an injured deer, you can call, what was it, animal rescue? Just
It's animal control. I was
Animal
looking up,
control.
I will get you the exact thing because we have it up here in the Santa Monica's when we find, you know, mountain lion kittens and things like that, and injured wildlife. We call animal, I think it's animal control, but I've been through it before. So let me,
Yeah, I also would suggest Department of Fisheries and Wildlife. 'Cause
that's another
sometimes
one.
animal control usually puts the animal down and euthanizes them. And I hate
Yeah.
seeing it happen to mountain lions. We have
Well,
so few.
yeah, and actually you could follow the story of P-22 and how they managed to get that beautiful animal to the right care. So,
Okay, well, we're going to end now, and so thank you, and there will be an email with all the links that we're talking about. We'll put those together for you.
So thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will continue to let you know of any programs that we have coming up.
All right, bye.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.